Okay, so before we jump into the Test Genius stuff, I want to talk through one little thing that I've been fighting with most of the morning. And Katie helped me walk through the biggest part of it. So I have a side project I'm working on. Not a big deal what it is. Let me pull up the VS Code. We'll switch over to that one real quick. And no, not what I want to do. Correct. Basically, there you go. What I needed to do was, well, the first problem I had was I had my YAML file set up wrong. This is one of those where naming will bite you hard. And it got me because I spent like an hour trying to figure out why my YAML file wouldn't run, only to realize it was in the workflow folder, not the workflows folder. Yeah, that'll break everything. And part of this is I'm using Next.js for React, and I am liking it. I have to admit that. And I've been having this problem with determining what environment I'm in, because for my local environment, for my GitHub Pages environment, which that YAML file up there builds, and for Vercel, they're all three different environments. And I need to know which one I'm in to do this, add the repo name so that my GitHub Pages works. By taking this out, it works in my local and it works on Vercel. It doesn't work on GitHub Pages. If I put that in, it sort of works on. I have another piece in here I got to fix. It sort of works on GitHub Pages, which it's getting closer. Vercel breaks, and my local works. But what I just figured out with a little bit of Katie's assistance is an interesting little piece here, where I had seen this. Okay, so to create a .env file in my local machine via the GitHub Actions build process, I had seen the echo, and I had touch and echo in my file, but I think I was missing the export too. So I get that set up, then I'll be able to identify, am I in my local or Vercel, which I know that works, or can I get it working in that? I'm probably going to change it. It was originally production that I was calling it, but I might just call it GitHub Pages, something like that. Something simple in there that I can look for as a string. Okay. Not sure if his is right or wrong, but I was missing that part. And that's when the double greater than in the Linux environments, or bash environments, whichever you want to call it, essentially is porting. It's saying, hey, take this output, so output of an echo, push it to a file. It adds it, tacks it on the end. Okay, so I think that was the big piece I was missing on that one. So stepping back, and there's no way I'll forget that at this point. Let's go take a look at the Scrum board. And Katie has been helping out tremendously with images. I saw some stuff last night. In fact, we can show it off here. I think we're good. If we're not good, we're really, really, really close on images. We're gonna get everybody to agree on this a little bit now. These on blue, it doesn't have to be on blue. This is just kind of where she put it. We have it in an SVG format as well as the PNG. We have it transparent, so we can drop it on any color we want. And it works much better in here, right, Katie? She emailed it to me, and the email comes through on a white background. So you have this white text in the middle that just disappears. So we probably don't want to put it on white. Okay. And then we have just the checkbox by itself with the transparency. And I gave Katie some ideas of how we can create that favicon to improve things a little bit. That was, what's the name of the site, Katie? Oh, blanking.
Cloudinary.
Cloudinary. There we go. One of the things I learned in Cloudinary a long time ago was, let's go there real quick. I don't have these images there, but I have enough here to kind of show you what's going on. log in. And wow, it doesn't keep me logged in. That's annoying. Don't care about that. Let's go to my media library. So one of the things that happens here is you can add, so right here, so I'm looking at this image. I don't know, I have an image of a flower here, but you can copy the URL, and the URL allows you to view that image in its full size. But one of the things Cloudinary can do really, really well is right here after the upload, if you put in something like width, and there was something else in there. Do you remember the full? Katie has it.
Like scale.
C scale or something like that.
It's C_scale, comma, W underscore, and then the number of the
And here's the interesting part, because one of the things we're looking at with a favicon is you want it to be really small. And Katie had the same experience I had. I'm really good with basic manipulation of graphics, and I go into something like well, any of the tools basically, and you scale it down and it just becomes this blurry blob at 32 by 32 pixels. And I was doing something for another project, and I had to reduce the size to like 64 by 64 for an icon, and I opted to use Cloudinary. And what I realized was that their version and my version were radically different. Okay, the nice part is when you do the scale, and if it works right, it's really clean for a 32 wide. This is right, 32 wide, maybe 16 tall, right? I mean, that's remarkable. It's not blurring at all. I mean, or it is blurring, but I mean, minimal blurring. So the blurring is minimal, and it's so fast to do it. So if we're converting to an icon, that might be a good first draft to get us there. Okay. So just a little thought on that one. So we do have images. We have, we don't need to see those. Those are others. So I think those are pretty close to done, right, Katie?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
If everybody's okay with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we need the favicon because we're going to place it on the page. We have, I think, what we need to do, the banner. Assuming everybody's okay with it, yes.
And for the Cloudinary thing, am I going to be using my Cloudinary link, or do I take the image from that and copy it?
To create the favicon, you're going to take the link, you're going to set the width to 32, copy what's there, and put it in, save it as a file.
Okay.
And then somewhere along the way, put it into some favicon generator.
Okay, perfect.
It becomes favicon.ico, and you're ready to go from there. Yeah, I don't think we, with the SVG, I don't think we have to worry about too much about sizing out if we need a thumbnail on the page or something like that. I think we're okay there. That's the real advantage of the SVG. Okay. So we've got 3 other people on: Jack, Dylan, Federico. Thoughts on, are we moving forward with that? Not moving forward with that? Do we have other ideas that folks want to throw out? Thoughts on what we saw?
So this is awesome. So let's proceed.
Okay.
So
Katie, you got 1 thumbs up. Dylan, Federico?
Yeah, I think it looks great too.
Okay. Dylan?
Yeah, I still like it. I mean, I see the lines are horizontal now. Or were they always horizontal?
Yeah, they were vertical.
Here's the vertical.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see those change.
I don't know why the vertical bugged me, but it did.
No, you said he had a vision, so I mean,
And this is remarkably close. I think Katie's original had a lighter green, really pale green, and the check was a little bit grayer. And last night we poked at it for half an hour. And I liked the pale green, I think, better, but I think it actually functions better for what we need, with a little bit darker green and a little bit darker check. And she put that curve on the end of it too, which that was piece that I asked for. Okay, so if everybody's okay with it, I think we can run this direction. Count that as good. All right, cool. Good job, Katie. Thank you. That is awesome. All right, so let's take a look at what's on the board. So I'm going to say images are pretty much done. There's no code review, no test on that. We'll have to implement them, add them to it when you need the favicon, but I'd be really surprised if Katie doesn't have that to me sometime this weekend, right? She moves really fast when she's ready to get something done. Even if it's next week, it doesn't matter too much. I mean, we're not ready to push anything out for anybody to look at. So we'll count that as done. You can move that over. And I know you guys are working on the material color scheme. That's coming along. I saw a note about it, having trouble finding resources. And sometimes that is, yeah, it's a little challenging. So appreciate them on the good fight on that one. So last time we had a heavy session on working with the node and the MySQL. And why did it open? Oh, wow, that was the page from last night. Not sure why that is there. Okay, but we spent a lot of time in the back end. Okay, and the bigger part of what we have and need is right here in this index.js. And my thought at this point, rather than sitting here and watching me struggle with authentication and authorization code in Node, when most of you guys have been doing this stuff recently, that this would be a great couple of cards. What I'm thinking is we'll count this as pretty much done on these two, because we have the database that we now know we can see data. We're not deleting data once it's set up. It works in your local environment. We have the back end that we know we can get request data from the stored local file, so that local JSON file. And we know the front end can read that. What we really need are the registration, login, logout, wired up. Adding stuff to the database, removing stuff from the database as needed. So if one of you wants to tackle that, I'm thinking I'm going to count these two as done once I close it out. You saw us do the manual testing last time. The only thing that's changed on that repo since the 3 approvals that I got was the images. So those images are part of the repo too that Katie put together. So those are the only changes that have happened here. So you're adding all of these images in as a part of the repository. Okay. So I'm going to close this one out. And this is actually technically 2. So I'm going to merge that. All right, so that's going through its process and doing its thing. We don't need to worry about that anymore. So we'll move these 2. And then wiring up. And, I don't care who picks that up. I mean, I can do it, but it seems like you guys would rather learn some Angular from me than have me build Express that you guys know. Right? Yeah, you're working with a different database, but most of that you're familiar with. So I did want to look at backend unit tests, and I'll probably tackle that as we start to get some of this in. Okay. I just so you know, one of the things I had originally put in here was we need to research and see what the common unit testing patterns are for Node Express, because I haven't done those in like almost a decade at this point. So I started looking, and I saw Mocha-Chai, which, okay, cool, another unit test. Oh, I saw Mocha-Chai again. Oh, look, another runner test suite. And then I started getting into, hey, we're setting this up and we're going to be using Jest. And here's another one that uses Jest. And if I have a choice, I don't really want to spend time learning another testing framework. I already know Jasmine. I already know Jest. So I'm going to be able to help you much better if I'm going to test framework that I'm familiar with. So we've got some things in here that are really good in these 2 articles. So my thought is I'm going to hang on to those 2 articles. I'll post those on the card. Some of what you need to consider is writing testable code. So as we work on those, if we look at our functionality right now, so like this unauthorized get, This is an anonymous function that we're passing to the get right now, right? You can only test that by triggering the apt get. If I pull that function out, and let's say it's from an imported file, say we have a second file that's our index functions or something like that, and you import it there. So these are already exported in that file. Then all we have to test are those functions from that file. See how that makes testing a little bit easier by separating that out? I see Katie's head kind of bobbing up and down. All right, I'll do this one to give you a rough idea of what to do here. Okay, so let's do this. We'll create a new file. And
Yeah, I'm new to testing, so.
that's fine. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So I'm going to create this function. And so what I'm going to function file, and I'm going to cut that code right there. I'm just going to paste it in for now. And you can make this a function. And this is the add for the root. Okay. We may have, or sorry, this is a get on the root. We may have another one, a get later on. So there's get API tests. All right. So this one's get root. So we'll say get root. And since this is just a standard function, we do that. And now we have a function that's exportable that we can now import on the other side, but we can also import it for tests. Okay, so what happens, we're kind of leveraging two things in there. So we need to bring it in somehow. And I haven't done it with a require in a long time, but so we'll try this. So we'll do a const. Oh, let's do this. Let's make this a little cleaner. There's another way you can do it. Let's export defaults. And we're going to say get root. And you can have both in. It doesn't matter too much. But you'll have each of these commas separated, so the list will get longer and longer as we put more functionality over here. But what happens is then we can then deconstruct that. Equals require. Sorry, I haven't done this require in a long time, so I'm hoping I can get this to work. There we go. And I just noticed that I got one that's bugging me there. There we go. And then we come down here and we just say, get rid of it. So what we do. Okay, so what it's going to do is it's going to trigger get root and it's going to pass it responsive request like you would expect. You don't have to do any more than that. Okay. So you can see I really don't have to test a lot here. And you can also see that this becomes easy to test because I say, hey, get the get root function. Let's pass it a request and see what happens. We should get status coming back and the text unauthorized, but we have to just kind of check to see what that data is that comes back. In fact, you could theoretically pass it an object that has all of this so that you can see what's passed to it. So a test could look something like expects whatever. You don't have to use the real request response. What we can do here is we can say const request define. We know it's not doing anything. You can see it's gray up there. Const response equals, and it's going to be an object that has a status. And status is the function. And the function takes a code. And the function does something really interesting here because it returns another object that has send, which is a function that takes in text. So something like that would be the object you would pass. And what I would do, and this is just me, I would say let expected code, let expected text. And then in here, inside these, you can say expected code, expected text. So then now here, all you have to do now that you've got this setup in place is we trigger get root, passing it request and response. And then after that, we can say, hey, we expect, expected code for what? You know, given that that's a number, we might want to come up here and change this to, let's say, -1, right? And you can see that we would have expected text to equal unauthorized. Right? We've now set up a function to handle a response correctly. And you can see how we nested with that return. So it actually executes this status on response. Status takes the code, sets the code, then returns send. Because it's returned send, now we can fire send. That's how you do that dot notation attachment. That is another function that just takes the value that's passed in, which is unauthorized, and you can check with that. Okay. Kind of pseudo code-ish. It's recorded, so we have it. Yes,
Can you
Katie.
put 2 expects after the bottom? Like, can you write expect this and expect this? Okay.
Like that. Yeah. Absolutely. Generally, the general rule of thumb when you're writing code is generally you want one expect. Rarely ever works that way. Okay. Right here, I have a set of expects because I have one line of code. It's doing 2 things. But how am I going to separate that up so I'm not doing 2 things? I mean, this one doesn't logically make sense. So in my mind, technically, we are doing one thing. We are setting the status. We're sending a value back that has that status attached. And these 2 expects are testing that, or checking the expectations against that one set of functionality. Okay. So yeah, sometimes you have to step a little bit outside of the rules, especially with server side like this. Okay. So you can see how here in the index file, I really have to test that. You can see I don't really need to test that. That's kind of setup stuff. We're really not even using roles. We probably can get rid of that as we go. This is all set up. No need to test any of that. So you're going to have a function here, a function here, a function here, a function here. And we really don't need to test that the server can spin up and run. Although theoretically, you could move this out if you wanted to and test that if you were doing something after the server spun up, other than console log. Okay. The other thing is they can be synchronous or asynchronous. So in this case, this is a synchronous test. To make that async, all you'd really have to do is something like that. We didn't need the async functionality, so works just fine like this.
And would you have to use await for the res status? Like, so if you did the async, do you also have to do await res dot status?
If you were making this one async, yeah.
Okay.
So like in the cases here where you have async, the await's already in there. Since we didn't need an await there. Exactly. Okay. So just like you would make an async await over here, you do the same over here. Okay. So that should be enough, I think, to give you an idea of what we're going to end up doing with testing. Okay. I'm going to paste these 2 articles over there. If you guys, I'll add them to the card, and I'll probably end up adding them as a part of the recording. So on YouTube, I'll tack those 2 articles. And I don't know how good these articles are. I just know it's the first two I came across. I liked this part on writing testable code that gets me thinking out loud, right? For 15 minutes. All right, so let's add that one in. Okay, so they're there for visibility. I'll probably tackle this one once we start to get some of the other stuff in place, just to kind of get it started. And I'll do something like we did with the other. We'll get the backend unit test in place. We'll talk about how to get it into the pipeline. So we're checking both the front end and the back end tests in the pipeline. And then let you guys kind of go to town with it and wrap it up. If somebody wants to tackle that before I get there, not going to bother me. Okay. Basic banner is a good one somebody can pick up. We can work through that one right now. We have 30 minutes. We talked about making site responsive, services to make homepage selections, test start page, stuff like that. Maybe we do tackle the basic banner. I know there was talk of adding some of the login, logout stuff. So why don't we tackle that now, since we have 30 minutes, and move that forward. I may hand that card off to somebody if somebody wants to pick it up and move it forward. Okay, so let's take a look at what we're doing with the basic banner. Which means we're going to shift over, and I'm going to save this because I don't want this to come in on this branch. We have it recorded so you guys can find it. All right, so let's switch over to front end. And let's see, let's open in the integrated terminal. Let me serve. Been in React for the last 3 days, so my brain switching between these commands. So I'm going to serve it up. We're going to see where we're at. Okay. And basically, we have this big page, and we have a header. Cool. It's not much of one yet, but we have a header. Okay. So let's go take a look at our header and figure out what we want to do there. And so it's probably in the features. It is. So let's think about this header. So probably the first thing we need is a link to that image on the right side, which means we're going to need some kind of wrapper on the header, right? And let's go take a look at material. So we need some kind of toolbar. When I say it that way, because guess what we have in here somewhere is a toolbar. It has sort headers, but that's for tables, right? Here we go. That looks kind of like what we want, right? We're going to put an image in there. We'll have to size this thing a little bit. And we have the capacity of doing stuff on the other side, kind of stuff, really kind of cool, easy enough to work with. If we look at this code, do we want to look at, adding a menu on there? I don't know, probably not on the left side. I don't, we'll see. But let's take a quick view, because you can do multiple rows too, is one that I've dealt with as well. And then we can stack them, which is really kind of cool. But what we really need just is a map toolbar. Okay. And to use a map toolbar, guess what? We're going to bring the map toolbar in. And so we'll come down here into our module. And we should somewhere in here have our, there we go. So the map button kind of got buried in there in the middle. We'll move this out so we can put all the material stuff together. Okay. Oh, linting, put that in there. All right, I guess we're going to put it in there. So we need to import the map toolbar. Sure. Why did that not hint help me? Let's double check that real quick. API. Import map toolbar from Angular material toolbar. All right. Well, the linting didn't help me, but that's okay. At least now we know what it is. Angular material. And while I've got that, I want to do something else, but give me 1 second because we need to put that down with the material. And now we've got a list that's getting a little bit longer. We're going to do a quick fix, which then makes it vertical. Easy enough. All right, so we brought it in there, but I also know from experience that we need to bring that in the header spec file. Just one of those things, it has to be in the test. And we're declaring a component, but I think we import a module. That way the test doesn't do weird glitchy things saying, I don't know what a map toolbar is. Okay, so as you bring those in, you're going to do that. So here we can now do map dash toolbar. So save that. That's linting erroring. It's not an actual error. So let's go see what we got. Now we have this nice kind of weird grayish dark thing, right? And we want to do it with our style, matching our style. So let's come back over here, take a quick peek at how they did the color stuff, right? So let's view code and color primary. Primary, secondary, alternate. Katie's familiar with these as they come up, right? We're just going to throw primary in and see what it does. It might be that ugly purple color. That can always be fixed later. So now as we look, it is the purple color. Okay. And there's one in there that bugs me on that as well. So maybe this is secondary. I don't know what the secondary is for that. Oh, secondary is nothing. Okay, so what are my color options? Let's go look at buttons. Buttons has all
You
of
could
them.
try accent.
Primary, accent, basic, worn, disabled. So accent. Yeah, let's try accent. That would be a little better. All right. See what we got. Oh, okay, cool. That's going to be weird having green on a green. So what other options do we have? Worn probably would work, right? And we can write a local override for it if we need to, too. That'll probably, it's horrible. Yeah. So let's do this. Let's get rid of the color. And we're going to say class equals override. Toolbar. And so here we're going to do a local override. So these will always override something above it unless an important is put in there, right? And you had just a blue, right? Or was it a different color blue?
Yeah, it's kind of an indigo. I can get
Indigo?
you the hex value if you want.
That'd probably be better.
Okay, it's 4B 3F D5. And
There we go.
if that's too loud, we can always change it.
That's not loud at all. I think it's actually fairly complimentary. Now, the one thing I see there that bugs me is the header is not hard up against the edge. So let's go take a quick look at what's going on in there. And that might be something else touching that. I'm just going to move that over here for now because I want to see my inspection tool. I don't know where it's coming up at the moment. Doesn't help us. There, I have 3 screens, so it's usually somewhere else. But you guys can't see that, so it doesn't help. There we go. All right, so what's going on here? So we have the header that looks like it's in the right place, but we have home that has some kind of weird gap around it. And root has some weird gap around it. So this is in body. So somewhere in the body, we have a margin of 8 pixels that's killing us. Okay, and it's user agent. So it's local default kind of stuff. So let's go back to, given that, we'll go to our global style sheet. And we have HTML, but we don't have body, right? And we want It's display block margin 0, right? Look at that. Solid on the edges. That's a good start, right? Now, if we assume we're going to be scrolling stuff under, putting a margin on the bottom of the header isn't going to help too much. Okay, what we really need to look at is everything that's not header needs to have some kind of pad at the top to account for that. But if that becomes a scrollable space, and let's say the header stays in place, we need to account for, so we need to make a kind of a decision there. Do we want the header to stay or not? My thought is just let it scroll, which then means we can, on the header itself, we can add a margin to the bottom and kind of clean things up a little bit. We do need to kind of wrap here somewhere so we're not hard up on the edges on our other components. So that'll take a little bit of adjustment. And so then our header component HTML, still complaining about that, don't care. But our header component CSS, just margin bottom, 1M, and there we go. Right, so as I work on code, I'm adjusting things a little bit. I want to leave the code better than when I started. So part of what I want to do in this too is I want to take a look at why everything else we have, oh, we don't have our server spun up. So that's why this is not showing a list of grades, right? Just realized that. So let's spin up our other server. And this one's going to be in backend. And in our backend. NPM start down. So it's connecting to the databases, connecting to the database, so it's pretty much ready to go, which means in theory, over here, we got to refresh and we should get that list of grades now. Okay. So it helps to have both sides up and running, right? So now let's take a quick look at, we have the grade level section, we have all this that's inside there that really needs a pad of some sort. So I'm wondering if, do we do it at the assistant grade level, the list of grades, that kind of stuff, or do we look more at how our parent components wrapping things? So this is all within router. So it's not at that level, but it's at the page level. So let's take a look at this home and what the HTML looks like. So we have a header, but we have these pieces that are just kind of floating out here, okay? What I'm thinking is this probably should be wrapped in some way. I'm just going to call it the body wrapper. I'm going to put that down there. Which isn't going to change anything yet because we don't have any styling on body wrapper, right? Now we know we have one pixel at the top. So we need to add something on the left and right more than anything else, right? So our CSS, we now have body wrapper. And we're going to do margin. But we could do margin, we could do padding. I think either one's fine here. 0, 1M. And the 0, 1M, right? When you're doing 2, it's top and bottom first, left and right. So I always write top, right, bottom, left. Okay, easy enough for a fix there. And now we're starting to look like something, right? So now we need to bring an image in, but actually haven't brought an image in on the project yet. They're in here in images, but they're not in front of it. Okay, this is kind of a stash place where I'm putting things. So we don't need it on the blue, but I'm thinking the checkbox transparent SVG probably will be the best route. So let's copy this. And we're going to dump it into our assets. Folder in there, called images. Paste it, and then we'll rename it real quick. And we're just gonna call this logo. I don't have to type as much, right? So in our home, well, not our home component, already dealt with the home component. Don't need the SVG open. Don't need the module. Don't need the test. Do need this. So then image source equals assets, images, logo. And it ought to be nice, right? And this is the test genius effect box logo. That sound good enough for an image? And something should happen. Oh, look at that. Yeah, it's there.
It's
All right,
large
so-
and in charge, that's for sure.
Yeah, looking good.
All right, so we're gonna add a class logo to it, and it's complaining because we're getting too wide. There we go. So we'll add the class logo. And so let's say here, height. Let's start here. That might not work with the CSS or with the SVG, but hey, look at that. Boy, did I guess a number right. That looks remarkably good. Okay, so we probably ought to throw an anchor tag around it. I mean, standard behaviors, you want to be able to go home, right? When you click on one of them. So href equals / pound / home. And a little better way to do that. We'll work through that here. All right, so we are using routing, and the href threw something off in there in positioning. Just a little bit. We'll have to figure out what in the anchor tags is where that's coming from. But we're using Angular routing. So the pathing on Angular routing is a little different. So let's look up Angular route. That path will work. Okay. But there's a slightly better way to do it. And we're gonna make sure we meet our requirements on that and teach you guys something too. So we have all the pathing set up, and home is one of those we set up for the home component. So what you want is something like this router link. Okay, and the router link then ties straight to this path. We don't have to worry about the hash and all of that. Okay. So router link is what we want. And do a quick double check of that. Router link equals / first home component. And so since we're doing router link, we just need to do that. Should work. So now notice, look down at the bottom. Okay, it's really, really small down the bottom. Localhost 4200 hashtag home with that router link. It put all that in for us. We didn't have to remember it. Okay, if we click it, we're going home, but we're already there, so it doesn't matter too much. Something happened in our positioning. I noticed it jumped up like 2 pixels or something like that, and then those little things annoy me. So for some reason, the anchor is 42 pixels high. That's 32 pixels high. That's why it jumped up. So why is an anchor tag by default 42 pixels tall, or does it have, it doesn't seem to have a pad inside it or anything like that.
Is it maybe just a browser default with the material?
Absolutely could be. Well, that's part of what I'm looking at here too, is as you look down here, I'm looking for what's in here. Color, cursor, text decoration, flex, box sizing, padding. It's got a 16 pixel pad, but that shouldn't be impacting anything other than that left side. But this is the toolbar pad, and it doesn't have a set size. This is toolbar, that's HTML. So I'm thinking you're right, that it's something anchor default. So Auto's not doing it. Inherit. Content doesn't seem to work. Inherit seems to do some interesting stuff. Initial. It's still a little up. It makes me nervous to customize that. But if we just did a height of pixels, that would fix it. So knowing that's fixing it, I don't want to fix it for all anchor tags. Okay. What we want to do is just add a class. I'm just going to call this logo. So that in here, we can just do the logo anchor. And move this inside it because they are nested. And I'm missing a semicolon over there. There we go. Puts back where we need it to be. I'm okay with individual customization because if we're using links somewhere else, I want to make sure they still look like they should for that browser. Okay. So the next piece we need is registration and login, right? So we want to add things to our material. And it's our material toolbar. We'll add them on the right side. So let's see how they did it just to get a rough idea. And it's these last two. So we have a couple of buttons that have example icon classes. Okay. So let's see what the CSS looks like for buttons with, well, that's not much of anything, is it? Oh, it's okay. So we're using flex to put the first one on the left and everything else head over. Okay, I get that. Makes sense. So let's look at my favorite place for flex. It's this one. If you haven't been here for the complete guide to Flexbox with CSS tricks, it is an awesome page. So we put that into the chat. When I need anything Flexbox wise, I always go here. What I know is the parent properties are all down the left side, the children are all down the right side, really clean, easy to work with. You know, what we essentially want is a flex, but let's look at the parent real quick and see what we get. Okay, so justified, you know, space between could work. And if we look at what they had in their example, flex 1-1 auto, which that's attribute for the child. Example spacer flex 1-1 auto. I don't see example. Oh, there it is. He put it in as a spacer in between the left and the right. That's an interesting way of doing it. Okay, so let's take a look at what the flex 1-1 auto would do for us, right? Shorthand for flex glow, flex shrink, flex basis. Second and third parameters, we have 1-1 auto. Flex shrink, flex basis are optional. Default is 0-1 auto. Set it with a singular number value, like flex 5, changes the flex basis to 0%. Okay, so flex grow is 1, flex shrink is 1, so it's not going to grow or shrink, and its flex basis is auto, so that, that kind of makes sense. It's an interesting way of doing it. I think we can borrow that. So let's come back over to our code. And we already have the anchor there, so it's okay to leave that there, I think. We're going to put that in there. And then on the right side, we're going to need some functional code. And my best guess, there's a couple ways to do this. We can do it as a link, style the link but we want to open a modal. And I think just straight text with an on-click on it's probably okay. And we'll use a span here. We're going to go class equals, let's say link modal. And we're going to say login. And then our second one will be register. There are a couple things that'll have to happen with that, but we'll figure that out here as we go. So let's get that example spacer class from here. Not much to it, but we're borrowing. I'm okay, and that's going to be there. Save, it's refreshing, and our content is paired. Oh, because we probably didn't save the HTML. Would be my guess. All right. Nothing in between them, that kind of thing to gap them out or anything like that, no vertical bar. But, you know, we can figure that kind of stuff out, right? I mean, could be just as easy as and making sure that that span has a pad on the other side, right? And so we had a vertical pad in. Say. There we go. So far they work, right? Doesn't look too bad. Although our font here seems to be much bigger than our font down here. Oh, might have to think about that. I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. We need to make it a little functional. And so if we look here, we have these link modals. So let's start there. And we're going to say, oh, on hover. We'll go pale green since we have the green on Genius, right?
Can I just ask a quick question about the and? So that's instead of writing dot link modal hover, like you're just adding that to the
it would be colon hover to the end of that,
element.
right? Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so now it should give us a hand and change our color when we hover. Doesn't mean we can do anything yet, but we at least have the visuals there. Okay. I don't. Oh, okay. So we got that in place. Let me ask a quick question. I would like to open one modal. Probably gonna take 10 minutes to get that in. You guys okay with that? Need to hop off? What? We're at 11.
I could stay for it. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know about
Yeah,
anyone
sure, go
else.
ahead.
If one person's interested, I'm moving forward.
Let's go.
So I'm going to open another terminal. And we need to do an ng generate. And the component. I'm going to put these into shared. And the first one we're going to create is the, let's do the register modal. Created a couple files for us in the shared register modal. Okay, register modal is as fancy as any other modal we've worked with. You can see I did a lot to make this register modal work, right? Right. And did a little styling fix. Oh, should have done all of them. There we go. All right. And so let's come in here. Excuse me. And this is where the fun happens because we need to do a click. Oh, we did the register, right? equals, and what are we going to fire? Trigger register, which doesn't exist yet. So we're going to write that. So we'll come in here into our header component, and hey, we get our first thing we get to create in here. And this is going to be register, trigger register, right? Yeah. Now we need to do something. This is where we come back over here. We want to look at the pop-up dialog. Okay, so the dialog, pick one right there. Take a quick look at their code. And they're bringing in, you know, this is the actual dialog. This is this screen, okay? So there was the button to open the dialog. Take a quick look at the TypeScript. So he's bringing in the mat dialog. And he's passing a data. We're not passing a data. And we need the private dialog, mat dialog. So we definitely need mat dialog. We need the mat dialog ref because that's what we're adding it to. Well, he's not using that in there. That's interesting. Oh, he's bringing it in for down here. Okay, for the other tooling. All right, so yeah. So we need that parts of this for this one and parts of it for the other one. The inject. We're not using the inject. We're not using the mat dialog because we're not passing data in. We'll be passing data out. I'll show you how we do that here in a bit. Okay, so let's bring that first part over to our code. And so we need just mat dialog here, I think. And we need a constructor. And we're going to do a private mat dialog. Mat dialog. Now, don't forget, since we're bringing a new component in, number one, we have to add it to the, we may not have to add it to the spec file. Might. Okay, but we definitely will have to add it to module, and this is dialog, so import that dialog module. See, that time it let me do it. Mat dialog module. Got to bring it in for the project overall for this to even know it's there. So we've got it. Now we need to do the trigger register part, which is here. There we go. So we got we did a private. Doesn't matter private public. That only matters for testing. So roughly need that pattern here, and I'll show you what all this means when we look at the code. And we'll bring that up. And so we're creating a dialog ref. And let's do dialog to match the pattern. And now we have to import our register. A register modal component. And it doesn't like order. Okay. That's fine. And then this becomes the register modal component. We're telling it which one to open. We're not passing in any data. Okay. We're opening it and we're passing a reference to it. The reference allows us to do things like, hey, after it closes, this is what I want to do. Okay. I'm going to change this. Okay, so this will be register complete. Something like that. It's fat arrow. We're going to send something back to it. Dialog closes. I don't care about animal result at the moment. We're going to get data. Okay. And this should be like username, password kind of stuff. We'll just put the console login. just so it stops complaining about things. Okay, so what happens then is we need to here we need to say this dot register complete bind this. Oh, always have to do the bind this. Okay, I like to put it in. It doesn't hurt to put it in. The bind this says, hey, I'm in this class. Don't try and run this and not know what we're referencing as our local class instance. Okay. So this is what we need to open it and to come back to it. Okay. On the other side, if you notice what we had in here, this is our dialog. It has whatever HTML. I'm not worried about the HTML. But it gets this public dialog graph. Yeah. Reference to its own name. Okay. Which gives us access dialog graph to do things like close it. Okay. So we're going to grab this again because we need that dialog ref part of it. Let's come back to our code. I do need to move that over because it's really hard to click that little edge. And we're going to come down here to the register modal component. We're going to bring that in. We don't need those two. We do need this. Okay, and do a quick check of what he's doing on it. So we need that private dialog ref in the constructor. And what are we complaining about? Oh. So it's not generic, right? And we need to do an on close. There's two ways you can do the on close. And I tend to prefer doing it this way, where you can grab the data or pass in the data by reference and send that data back. Okay. And we'll eventually need an on cancel. You can do the same, some of these with command line of buttons on these on close, on cancel, that kind of thing, but we're going to do it a little simpler. And so what we need then is that dialog graph close. But here's the trick. What you saw in the other code is like this, right? Especially for the cancel. What I don't like about that is in one case, you're going to be sending back undefined. In the other case, you're sending back an object with data in it. So what if the close did something like this, state false, which means it's a cancel, okay? But our close, as opposed to the cancel, is state true. Then I can just check that state to see what it is. So name, let's put some data in. Okay. So this should be enough to allow us to open it. We still can't close it because we haven't changed anything in our HTML yet. So let's do a quick peek at their HTML. And notice the mat dialog title, the mat dialog content, the mat dialog actions, right? We kind of want those to make our dialog look really pretty. Okay, and once you've got the basic pattern down, it's really easy. So our title is, this one's registration. And right now, I'm not going to put anything in here. And it's going to fix it. And yeah, you need a blank line there. And all right, so this one will be cancel. And this one will be submit. And if the initial focus is going to be on the initial, I don't want to do a dialog close like that. What we want to do is a quick on close. And this one will be an on cancel. We should have enough to make this work. all the way through, which could be kind of cool. Let's come over here. Let's get our console open real quick. And we're going to try login. Oh, it's not on login, it's on register. Look at that. So if we cancel, notice we pass that state false. If we submit, it's passing true and it's sending a data. Kind of cool. You can see how login could then work. Very similar to what we did with register. You'll have another component. Don't care what happens on the component. We'll get our username, we'll get our password, we'll get our have them duplicate the password for registration and that kind of stuff. But the nice part is it all comes back to none of the sending it to the back end happens on the modal. What happens is you come back to this register complete. This is where we now can make our API call and say register. So one of the things that I like to do here is we're going to do an ng generate service, and it's going to be in shared register modal. It creates those services for us, and it put them in the wrong place. So we're going to move those in here. So notice we got register modal service. And if you want to get really fancy, sometimes we'll put dash API or something like that, but this is the API service, okay, that we need. And it's a quick fix of all these to get it nice and clean. So in here, this is where we actually make our API call. We can do a couple things if we want. We have a service up here, an API handler service that has this get URL. We have access to endpoints and things like that. What we need to do is I want to reuse these, but I don't want to pull this service in to reuse them. This is a great place for what's called a class abstraction. Okay, but I told you 10 minutes and we're already at 14. So what we're going to be doing, what we'll start with next time is we'll build that service to actually send it to the back end. We get our back end to console log, or if somebody's built it out, it might actually save it to the database. Okay. But we need to build that abstraction onto the API handler services to make our lives easier, because these, let's see, endpoint, HTTP, get URL, all that can be abstracted. So we have it in one place and we can have something like this where we need it. The question often comes up, well, why don't I just use this service and tack my new posts and gets and all in there? It's a valid question. Okay. And if you're the only one working on the project, go for it. Okay, put all your API calls in one place. Anytime you add more than like 3 people to a repository, you're going to start stepping on each other's toes, because one of the things you do a lot is make API requests as your application gets bigger and bigger. By separating out those API services with the components that are using them. So what we should have had for this one, what I'm thinking is this API handler service is going to become our abstraction. We'll move this functionality into an API service on the home component. So you move those calls, those posts and gets and all that, to the components that are using them. Home component doesn't have its own service yet. So we'll have an abstraction to get the basic stuff that we need repeatable. This then becomes the customized piece that gets added in. So our local API service looks really clean, really easy to work with. Make sense? So we'll take a look at that next time. Was that kind of cool seeing it start to come together? It almost starts to look like a web page, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're almost there.
Well, I mean, it's another step in the right direction. I don't know if we're almost there, but we're a long way in. You know, I can see some other thought processes, like here we get the JSON file. Could this service up here that has the grades read through that and say, hey, I have 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, but I don't have high school, college, or adult. Maybe those get grayed out. Right? So if we have access to that on that component, you know, you can use those other services even though they're in other places. No, it doesn't look like much, but think about what we've built. You know, we have a backend database. We have a backend. We're pulling data from the backend. You guys know the auth registration stuff. Somebody should be able to pick that up and move forward fairly quick with that. We've wired up a registration modal, although no content on it. We'll add that. And you can see it wouldn't take much to duplicate and create a login modal, right? We do need a little bit of handling up here. So like when they register, do we count them as logged in at that point? I don't know. That's for you guys to decide. But if they're logged in, we shouldn't see log in or register. We should see log out, right? Or maybe a picture with their icon with a menu in the drop down or something like that. You know, a couple of things we could figure out there, but I'm starting to think, you know, should this be a part of the header, or should it be its own login, register, logout component that handles all that complexity in one place? Something to think about. Okay. The reality is this component isn't going to have much more functionality being added to it. Right? If we need a menu or something like that, that could be added in as its own component. But really, I mean, for now, it's probably okay to keep it here. But we've built a lot. We really have. We've gotten a lot of things done, a lot of decisions made, a lot of things moving fairly smoothly, I think. What do you guys think? Doesn't look pretty. That's absolutely for sure. I'll agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's
This is one of the cases that we have to account for is cancel. If you click outside it, it comes back undefined.
It's a good foundation, I think.
Yeah, it's a foundation. Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, part of what we got to remember is we're trying to learn at the same time. You know, so let's save that. So the fix for that issue is just really simple. If result fail out, right? So basically, if they cancel by clicking outside it, we don't want it to go forward at all. Now, if they cancel, we don't want them to go forward, but we can account for that state. Cool. All right, so we've been going for an hour and 20, and Katie's been here chatting with me longer than that. So I need to go get coffee. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Enjoy coffee.
I will. This is my Saturday routine. I usually get it from my wife first thing in the morning, but I got up a little late. Okay, so I need to move this code to a branch and push it up. I'll push that up. I'm not going to open this as a PR because we still have a little bit of work to do here. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns before we hop off?